Let's talk about one of the most misunderstood mental health conditions out there, schizophrenia. For a lot of us, that word alone brings up some pretty intense and often pretty inaccurate images.
No, really, think about it for a second. What's the very first image that pops into your head? Is it something you saw in a thriller movie, something from a crime show? Odds are, our ideas about this condition are shaped way more by Hollywood than by reality.
Yep, I'm guessing it's one of these. Now, psychosis, that's a real part of it, for sure. But the whole idea of danger or this concept of a split personality, that's pure myth, mostly thanks to those movie portrayals. And that's created a ton of fear and confusion.
So that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to cut through all that noise, push past the myths, and get a much clearer picture of what schizophrenia is really all about. All right, first up, let's just dive right in and bust some of the biggest myths. The ones that cause the most harm and create all that stigma. So the biggest myth of all actually comes from a simple mistranslation. The word schizophrenia literally means split mind. But here's the key. It is not a split into different personalities. That's a totally separate and different condition called dissociative identity disorder. For schizophrenia, the split they were talking about is a split from reality. It's like a fracture in the connection between what a person is thinking, feeling, and doing.
And that brings us to the most damaging stereotype out there. This idea of the violent, unpredictable person with schizophrenia, it's almost entirely a work of fiction. In fact, the sad reality is the complete opposite. Because of stigma and vulnerability, people living with schizophrenia are far, far more likely to be the victims of violence, not the ones committing it. Okay, so if it's not about split personalities or violence, what is it about? Well, let's get into the most well-known feature of the disorder, psychosis. And let's talk about what that word actually means. So at its heart, schizophrenia is a psychotic disorder. Psychosis isn't the whole condition, but it's a key set of symptoms. And it's all defined by that split from reality we just talked about. And for most people, it tends to show up during a really critical time, from the late teens to early 30s, right when you're supposed to be launching into adult life. Psychologists usually break these symptoms into three main buckets. First, you've got positive symptoms. Now, positive doesn't mean good. It means things that are added to a person's experience, like hallucinations or paranoid beliefs. Then you have negative symptoms, which are things that are taken away or reduced, like motivation, emotional expression, or the desire to be social. And finally, disorganized symptoms, which cover things like jumbled thoughts and speech. Sometimes it's even called word salad. But here's where the story takes a turn most people don't see coming. Psychosis, as dramatic and difficult as it is really only part of the picture. For so many people, it's not even the biggest challenge they face day to day. And this is such an important point. We always focus on the psychosis, right? It's the loudest symptom. It's what we see in the movies. But what if the biggest, most persistent struggle is actually invisible? The truth is, many researchers and more importantly, people living with schizophrenia will tell you that the hardest part is the cognitive stuff. We're talking about those subtle, behind-the-scenes difficulties with memory, planning, and making decisions. All the things most of us just do without thinking. And here's the kicker. Even when medication helps manage the psychosis, these cognitive challenges often stick around. So check out this simple experiment from neuroscientist James Kesby. Imagine this. I show you two shapes, a triangle and a circle. You pick the triangle. Bam, I give you 50 cents. Now I ask you to choose again. What are you going to do? You're going to pick the triangle again, right? It's a no-brainer. But what research finds is that a person with schizophrenia is just a little bit more likely to switch to the circle, even though they were just rewarded for picking the triangle. And as Kesby explains, what's going on here is a cognitive bias that he calls jumping to conclusions. It's basically a tendency to make decisions based on less information. And you can see how this, over time, could lead to forming inaccurate beliefs, right? A flashing light isn't just a faulty fire alarm. It's a surveillance camera planted by a secret agency. So one little choice in a lab, that doesn't seem like a big deal. But our brains make millions of these tiny calculations every single day. And when these small differences in processing start to add up, they can make complex, real-world tasks, like figuring out the best time to change lanes in a traffic jam, or just managing a project at work, so much harder. Given how profoundly this can affect someone's life, you might wonder how common it is. Well, the number is about 1% of the entire global population, and it shows up in every culture, affecting men and women at about the same rate. Now, 1% might not sound like a huge number, but let's put that in perspective. That means schizophrenia is more common than cystic fibrosis, multiple sclerosis, and ALS combined. Or think of it this way. In an average high school with about 1,200 kids, statistically, around 12 of those students will likely develop this condition in their lifetime. So this isn't some rare, distant illness. It's a part of our communities.
So where does it come from? And maybe more importantly, what can we do about it? Well, our understanding of the causes has gotten so much better, and that has completely changed how we approach treatment. Well, there's no single cause. It's more like a complex recipe. There's definitely a strong genetic link. Your risk is about 10 times higher if a parent or sibling has it. It's also tied to brain chemistry, especially the neurotransmitter dopamine. But here's the thing, genes aren't destiny. Environmental factors like major stress or even being exposed to certain viruses early in life can act as a trigger for someone who already has that genetic risk. And our approach to treatment? Wow, it's come a long, long way. Back in the 19th century, people were often just warehoused in asylums. The mid-20th century gave us the first real medications. But today, the whole philosophy has shifted. It's all about a collaborative, recovery-focused model that emphasizes shared decision-making between the person and their doctor. So, a modern treatment plan is a whole-person strategy. Yes, it still includes newer, more targeted medications, but it goes way beyond that. We're talking supportive psychotherapy, amazing new cognitive training, sometimes using programs that literally look like video games, and a huge emphasis on community support. That includes things like peer counselors, people who have actually lived through it and are now helping guide others. It's a truly holistic approach. And all this incredible progress brings us to what might be the most important part of all, changing how we, as a society, see schizophrenia and the people who live with it. I love this quote from Dr. Dost Unger because it just gets right to the heart of it. So much of the stigma is built on this false idea that a diagnosis means you can't work, can't live on your own, can't have a rich life, but that is just not true. With the right treatment and support, recovery isn't just some rare possibility, it's the expectation. In the end, it's pretty simple. We tend to fear what we don't understand. So by separating the fiction from the facts, we can start to replace that fear with real understanding. And that understanding, that's the first, most crucial step toward building a world that's more compassionate and supportive for absolutely everyone.